When Damien's hand struck my face, the room froze. But what none of them knew was that the woman they thought had shattered was already planning the vengeance that would unravel him before their eyes.
Hello, if you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and tap the notification bell. Type in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as touching as this one, or maybe even crazier. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's begin.
The morning sunlight poured through the blinds of Lenora Vale's apartment, slicing across her cheek as she sat at the edge of her bed. She held a chipped mug of coffee like it was an anchor. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from caffeine, but from memory. Louisville had been kind enough to her these past 2 years, a city of bourbon, old brick facades, and horse tracks, where nobody looked at her as Damien Cross's former lover. Here she was just Lenora, a quiet woman working part-time at a bookshop, sketching in her notebooks when customers thinned out. But beneath the normalcy, a secret still rattled inside her chest. She had carried it for years, like a lead weight pressed against her lungs. She knew things about Damien, things no one else did, things she had lied about once to protect him, out of love, out of fear, out of some poisonous combination of both. Her reflection in the dark window across the room met her gaze. Pale skin, tired eyes, a small scar above her brow from an old accident Damien once swore wasn't his fault. She pressed her fingers against it absently. You kept him safe. You buried the truth. And for what? Her phone buzzed. A text from Izzy lit the screen. Izzy. Tonight's the night, babe. Just us, Rowan, Calder, June, Omar. Oh, and Damien said he's coming. You okay? Lenora's chest tightened. The familiar chill of dread crept in. Izzy's living room had always been a safe place. Wine glasses clinking, old playlists humming in the background, laughter spilling into the night. But if Damien was going to be there... She typed back slowly. I'll be fine. I need to stop hiding. Her thumb hovered before sending, and for a flicker of a second, she almost deleted it. But she hit send. A decision had been made. Across the city, Damien Cross leaned back in his leather chair, sipping a neat bourbon in his penthouse. The Louisville skyline twinkled through floor-to-ceiling windows. But Damien's eyes weren't on the view. They were on himself, reflected in the glass. Tall, sharply dressed, a face too symmetrical not to be admired. He smirked, checking his phone. His message thread with Izzy confirmed Lenora would be at the gathering tonight. A delicious thrill coiled in his stomach. He knew that she had tried to rebuild her life, tried to disappear from his shadow, but she'd never be free. People like her never were. Damien thrived on control, on the subtle squeeze of fear he inspired, and he had a way of reminding people, especially Lenora, that he could still shatter them with a look, a word, a gesture. Tonight would be no different. Pathetic little Lenora. She still thinks she's stronger without me. He thought of the document she once saw, the night she stumbled upon the wrong folder on his laptop. How pale she had gone when she realized where the millions from his charities had really gone. He had snapped at her, then charmed her, then manipulated her into silence. That secret was still locked inside her, and Damien counted on it staying there. By dusk, Lenora stood outside Izzy's brick townhouse, the golden glow of lamps flickering through the windows. Laughter and muffled voices spilled out. She pulled her cardigan tighter around her, fingers brushing against the scar above her brow again. When Izzy opened the door, she was a storm of warmth. Hair wild, smile wide. "Lenora, you look beautiful. Come in, come in." Inside, the living room hummed with life. Rowan Mercer sat in the corner, nursing a beer, his posture easy, but his gaze thoughtful. Calder was telling a story with too much hand motion, making June and Omar laugh until they wheezed. The scent of garlic bread and red wine drifted from the kitchen. It should have felt safe. But then she saw him. Damien stood near the bookshelf, expensive jacket thrown over a chair, glass in hand. His smile widened when his eyes locked on hers. "Lenora, he said, like the word itself was a claim. A hush fell for a moment too long. She forced a smile, her chest tightening. Damien. Rowan's eyes flicked between them, studying the tension. Izzy, quick to keep the peace, clapped her hands. All right, everyone, sit. Let's eat before Calder tells the ending before the beginning again. Laughter loosened the moment, but not for Lenora. All through dinner, Damien's gaze lingered. He made small jabs masked as jokes. Remember when Lenora couldn't even order her own food? Remember how shy she was? How I had to speak for her? The friends laughed awkwardly, not sure whether to join in or squirm. Lenora's hands clenched beneath the table. She didn't speak, but she thought, I know the truth about you, Damien, and maybe one day I won't keep it buried. As the night wore on, the wine poured freely. Conversation rose and fell, and Damien's arrogance grew. Rowan asked Lenora about her sketches, leaning in genuinely. She felt seen, if only for a moment, until Damien interrupted with a cruel chuckle. She used to waste hours doodling when she should have been focused on me. Typical. The laughter that followed was thinner this time. Even Calder and Omar looked down. Lenora swallowed hard, pulse racing. But this time she didn't shrink. She looked him dead in the eye and said, quietly, but firmly, At least I didn't waste years breaking people to feel powerful. The room stilled. Damien's smirk faltered. Izzy coughed, changing the subject, but Rowan's eyes lingered on Lenora, something like admiration flickering there. Inside, Lenora's heart pounded, not with fear, but with something sharper. Damien, one day I won't just stand up to you. I'll burn your empire down. If you were in Lenora's shoes, would you have kept Damien's criminal secret out of love, or exposed him the first chance you got? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to see how you would have handled it.
The wine had gone warm in their glasses, and Calder's booming laugh filled the living room as he finished another story about a botched camping trip. June clapped her hands over her face, tears in her eyes from laughing too hard, while Omar shook his head in mock disbelief. The circle of friends felt almost normal, almost safe, until Damien leaned back in his chair, his voice slicing through the easy laughter. You know what this reminds me of? His smile was slow, predatory. That time Lenora cried because she couldn't figure out how to set up a tent. Pathetic. We all had to stop what we were doing just to comfort her. The laughter died down to nervous chuckles. Eyes darted to Lenora. She felt heat flood her cheeks. She hadn't thought of that trip in years, but of course Damien remembered it, not with affection, but as ammunition. I was 19. Lenora said softly, fingers tightening around the stem of her glass. Exactly, Damien said, his grin widening. 19 and still helpless, always helpless. Something inside her chest cracked. The circle of friends shifted uncomfortably. Izzy frowned, ready to speak up, but Lenora beat her to it. I wasn't helpless, she said, louder this time. Her voice wavered, but the words cut through the room. I was with someone who wanted me that way. The silence was heavy. Damien's smirk faltered. What did you just say? His tone dropped, sharp enough to slice. You heard me, Lenora whispered, her pulse hammering in her ears. For a moment no one moved. Rowan leaned forward, brows furrowed. Izzy's hand hovered over Lenora's knee, offering silent support. Calder cleared his throat nervously, trying to laugh it off. Hey, maybe we... The sound of glass hitting the floor broke him off. Damien stood, his jaw clenched, bourbon spilling down his wrist. In 2 strides he was in front of Lenora. The friends froze, rooted to their seats, eyes wide. Lenora looked up at him, refusing to flinch. Her lips parted as if to speak, and his fist connected with her face. The impact was deafening in the small living room. The sound of bone against bone, the crack of her glass slipping from her hand and shattering on the hardwood. Lenora's head snapped sideways, her cheek ablaze with pain. Time fractured. The room went silent except for her ragged breath. June gasped. Izzy shot to her feet, knocking over her wine. Calder swore under his breath. Rowan was already moving, catching Lenora before she slid from her chair. Her fingers clutched Rowan's sleeve as the world tilted. She tasted blood in her mouth, metallic and hot. Damien shook out his fist, as if what he had done was no more significant than swatting a fly. He pushed me, he muttered. She always pushes. Are you insane? Izzy's voice trembled with rage. She stood between them now, shielding Lenora. Calder rose, his fists balled, torn between stepping in and the fear that Damien's wealth and connections carried. Omar's face was pale, his mouth opening but no words coming. Lenora touched her cheek, wincing as her fingers came away stained red. Her vision blurred, but in the haze, something sharpened. She had thought humiliation would kill her. She had thought shame would bury her again. But instead, something else burned through her. Clarity. Her voice was hoarse, barely audible, but it sliced through the silence. You just wrote your own ending, Damien. Rowan's eyes darted to hers, startled by the calm in her tone. Damien snorted, waving her off, already retreating into arrogance. You're drunk. You'll apologize tomorrow, like you always do. They'll forget. They always forget. But this time no one laughed. No one nodded. The air in the room had shifted, and everyone felt it. Lenora leaned into Rowan, her cheek throbbing, her heart pounding, her secret rattling loose inside her. She had covered for Damien's crimes out of love, out of fear. She had shielded him when the FBI sniffed around his fake charity. She lied for him when his donations didn't add up. And now? Now, she would let the truth bleed out, piece by piece, until Damien Cross had nothing left. The night ended in fragments. Izzy pressing an ice pack to Lenora's cheek, Rowan driving her home in silence, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The others lingering in Izzy's living room, shaken, whispering. But Damien's last words echoed in the air as he left, slamming the door behind him. You'll always come back, Lenora. You need me. Lenora, staring at her bruised reflection in the car window, whispered to herself. No, Damien, you need me. And tomorrow, I'll stop protecting you.
The next morning, sunlight cut through Lenora's curtains in sharp lines. Her cheek was swollen, the skin flushed with purple and blue. Every time she touched it, a sharp ache radiated down to her jaw. She had thought she would cry again when she woke, but her tears had dried hours ago. What remained was heaviness. Her phone vibrated on the nightstand. Dozens of messages lit the screen. Izzy, Rowan, June, Calder, Omar. She couldn't bring herself to open them. Not yet. The memory of last night's silence still rang in her ears. Their frozen faces as Damien's fist connected with her, the glass shattering, her humiliation hanging in the air. They'll forget, Damien had said. They always forget. And maybe he was right. Her hand trembled as she scrolled through Izzy's messages, each one more frantic than the last. Are you okay? Pick up. Please let me come over. You don't have to face this alone. Lenora set the phone down, her breath shaking. She wanted to hide, to curl into herself and vanish. That was what she had always done before. After every cruel word, every shove, every manipulation, she had retreated into silence, telling herself it was safer that way. But her reflection in the bathroom mirror didn't look safe. It looked broken. She pressed the ice pack Rowan had left on her counter against her cheek, closing her eyes. Rowan, his steady hands, the way he said nothing during the drive, just kept glancing at her like he was afraid she'd crumble. He hadn't pressed her, hadn't asked questions. That silence had been a comfort. Still, shame coiled inside her. Shame not only for what Damien had done, but for what she hadn't done, for the truths she had buried. She saw flashes of memory. Damien shoving a stack of documents into her hands, forcing her to memorize lines before an investigator's visit. Her nodding, obedient, swallowing back fear. I made you safe, she thought bitterly, touching her bruise.
And last night, you proved how much that meant." Meanwhile, Damien was already rewriting the story. He sat in the corner booth of a sleek coffee shop downtown, dressed immaculately, sunglasses perched on his head. His two closest business associates leaned in as he spoke, his voice calm, measured, confident. "She was hysterical," he said smoothly. "Lenora always was. Everyone knows how fragile she is. I barely touched her, but she made a scene. You'll see, by next week nobody will even remember." His companions nodded uneasily, unwilling to challenge him. Damien's smile tightened. He knew how to handle this. He'd handled worse. And yet, he couldn't shake the look on her face right after the punch. Not the shock, but the calm words she'd muttered. "You just wrote your own ending." Damien sipped his coffee harder than necessary, forcing the memory down. By afternoon, Izzy let herself into Lenora's apartment with a spare key. She found her friend sitting at the kitchen table, untouched toast on the plate, coffee gone cold. "Oh, honey," Izzy whispered, dropping her bag and wrapping her arms around her. "I just want you to know what happened last night. It wasn't your fault, not 1 second of it." Lenora leaned into the embrace, but her throat burned with words she couldn't form. Izzy pulled back, her eyes blazing. "I'm telling you now, I'll never let him near you again. And if you want to go to the police, no." The words snapped out sharper than Lenora intended. Izzy blinked. Lenora's chest heaved. "I can't. Not now." The silence between them stretched, weighted with things unsaid. Izzy reached across the table, taking her hand. "Then promise me you won't go through this alone." Lenora nodded faintly, but her thoughts spun elsewhere. She could feel the weight of Damien's crimes pressing against her ribs. She had resisted for years, kept them buried, but after last night, the dam had cracks. That evening, Rowan appeared at her door. He stood awkwardly, holding a brown paper bag. "I brought food," he said simply. "Soup and, pie. I didn't know what else to do." For the first time in 2 days, Lenora almost smiled. She let him in. They sat quietly on her couch, bowls balanced on their laps, the muted sound of traffic outside. Rowan didn't press her with questions. Instead, he said softly, "I just want you to know, what happened last night? It wasn't your fault. Not 1 second of it." Her throat tightened. "But everyone saw it, and they said nothing." "They froze, I admit. But I saw you, the way you looked at him after, like—" He hesitated. "Like you weren't afraid anymore. Like you were planning something." Her spoon clattered against the bowl. She stared at him. He held her gaze, steady, not prying, just present. And for a terrifying moment, she wanted to tell him everything. The lies, the documents, the night she swore to protect Damien from the law. But the words stayed locked in her chest. Instead, she whispered, "I'm so tired of hiding." Rowan didn't answer. He simply set his bowl down, shifted closer, and let her lean against him. But even as the comfort settled, the resistance inside her surged. Lenora wanted to believe she could let go, that last night would be the end of Damien's hold on her, but she knew better. He wouldn't stop. He never did. And unless she stopped resisting, unless she opened the vault of secrets she had buried, he would keep walking through life untouchable. Her cheek throbbed, her silence pressed against her throat, and in the quiet of her apartment, she realized she was no longer protecting him. She was protecting herself from the storm that would come when she finally told the truth.
Lenora hadn't wanted to leave her apartment for days, but Izzy's voice over the phone had been relentless. "You can't hide forever, Nora. We're all still your friends, and you shouldn't let him be the reason you disappear again." So she agreed, reluctantly, to come with Izzy to a charity gala held at the downtown Riverfront Hotel. It was supposed to be harmless, a night of music and overpriced cocktails, just a chance to be seen outside of her apartment walls.
But as soon as she stepped into the glittering ballroom, her breath hitched. Damien was already there. He stood near the bar, wearing a tailored navy suit that fit him like armor, a circle of admirers laughing at his every word. His glass of champagne caught the chandelier's light like a weapon. When his eyes landed on her, his smile stretched slow and wide, like a predator who had just spotted familiar prey. Lenora froze. "Izzy," she whispered, gripping her friend's arm, "you didn't say he'd be here." Izzy grimaced. "I didn't know, but maybe that's good." "Good! Yes!" Izzy squeezed her hand. "You can't hide forever, Nora. We're all still your friends, and you shouldn't let him be the reason you disappear again." So she agreed, reluctantly, to come with Izzy to a charity gala held at the downtown Riverfront Hotel. It was supposed to be harmless, a night of music and overpriced cocktails, just a chance to be seen outside of her apartment walls. But as soon as she stepped into the glittering ballroom, her breath hitched. Damien was already there. He stood near the bar, wearing a tailored navy suit that fit him like armor, a circle of admirers laughing at his every word. His glass of champagne caught the chandelier's light like a weapon. When his eyes landed on her, his smile stretched slow and wide, like a predator who had just spotted familiar prey. Lenora froze. "Izzy," she whispered, gripping her friend's arm, "you didn't say he'd be here." Izzy grimaced. "I didn't know, but maybe that's good." "Good! Yes." Izzy squeezed her hand. "You can't hide forever, Nora, and you're not alone this time." Lenora followed her gaze across the room. Rowan stood at the edge of the crowd, tall and steady, his hands in his pockets. His eyes flicked toward her, softening when he saw her hesitation. He gave a small nod, as if to say, "I've got you." Still, the air tightened in her lungs as Damien began walking toward her. Each step was measured, deliberate, meant to remind her that she could never outrun him. Damien said smoothly, as though the punch in Izzy's living room had been nothing more than a shared dream. "Lenora, you look radiant tonight." Her stomach turned. "Damien!" He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "We should talk. Alone." Izzy stiffened beside her, ready to protest, but Lenora lifted a hand. "It's fine." It wasn't fine. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but something inside her told her to hear him out, not because she wanted to, but because it would remind her exactly who he was. He led her to the balcony, the river glittering beneath the night sky. "You embarrassed me," Damien said casually, resting his champagne flute on the railing, "in front of everyone. And then you played the victim. You know how fragile that makes you look?" Lenora's fingers dug into the railing. Her cheek still bore faint traces of yellow-green bruising, and the memory of his fist flickered like a flashbulb. "You hit me in front of our friends." "You provoked me," he smiled faintly, sipping his drink. "They'll side with me, you know. They always do. They like me. They need me. You?" He shrugged. "You're just noise." Her jaw tightened. For a moment she said nothing, the night air heavy between them. Then she whispered, "Keep believing that, Damien. It'll make what's coming easier." His eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" Lenora didn't answer. She turned and walked back into the ballroom, her heart pounding. Rowan intercepted her near the refreshment table. "Are you okay?" His eyes scanned her face carefully. She nodded once, though her pulse still raced. "He hasn't changed." "Did you expect him to?" "No," she admitted, "but I wanted to see it for myself." They stood together in silence for a moment, the hum of violins and murmured conversation filling the air. Finally, Rowan spoke again. "He thinks he's untouchable. That's how men like him operate." Lenora's throat tightened. She met Rowan's gaze, her voice low. "He isn't untouchable. Not if I stop protecting him." Rowan tilted his head. "What do you mean?" Her chest burned. She wanted to tell him everything, the documents, the lies, the charity money funneled into his private accounts. But fear held her tongue. Instead, she shook her head. "Not now." Rowan studied her, then nodded slowly. "When you're ready." The steadiness in his tone anchored her. For the first time that night, she let herself breathe. Later in the evening, Izzy dragged them all into a group photo. Calder and Omar cracked jokes. June adjusted everyone's poses, and the flash of the camera captured their awkward smiles. Lenora stood between Izzy and Rowan, the warmth of their shoulders grounding her. But from across the room, Damien watched. His smile was gone. His grip on his champagne glass was so tight it cracked, spilling liquid down his hand. He muttered under his breath, "Ungrateful little," before disappearing into the crowd. The forced proximity didn't end with the gala. Louisville was small enough and their circles intertwined tightly enough that Damien seemed to lurk everywhere. At Izzy's birthday brunch, at Omar's promotion party, even at June's poetry reading. Each time Lenora's chest clenched. Each time Rowan kept near her, his presence calm but firm. And each time Damien reminded her with smirks, whispers, and sideline glances that he believed she would never expose him, that she was still his keeper. But what he didn't realize, what no one realized yet, was that every encounter was eroding her resistance. Every smirk, every reminder of his arrogance brought her one step closer to unlocking the vault of secrets she had buried. And when she finally did, it wouldn't just be Damien's mask that shattered. It would be his entire empire.
The rain fell heavy against the apartment windows, drumming a relentless rhythm that seemed to mirror Lenora's pulse. She sat at her dining table, a folder of papers spread before her like a wound she couldn't close. Rowan sat opposite her, his brow furrowed, but his voice steady. "You said you wanted to show me something." Her fingers trembled as she slid one sheet across the table. It was a ledger, neatly typed, Damien's signature at the bottom. The numbers told a story of missing funds, charity donations siphoned into shell accounts, money meant for cancer treatments vanishing into luxury purchases. Rowan's jaw tightened. "This is fraud." Lenora nodded faintly, shame burning her cheeks. "I helped him hide it." The words tasted bitter, but once spoken, they spilled freely. "I forged records, I lied to auditors. He said if I loved him, I'd protect him, and I believed him. For years, I believed him. I thought, if I covered his sins, he'd cover mine, that he'd love me more for my loyalty." Her voice cracked. "But loyalty to Damien is a death sentence. He takes and takes until there's nothing left." Rowan leaned back, staring at the papers. His silence was heavy, but not condemning. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "You thought you were protecting him, but really you were protecting yourself from losing him." Lenora's throat tightened. She pressed her hands against her face, the memory of those years unspooling inside her. Flashback. She was 24, sitting on Damien's leather couch in his glass-walled penthouse. He handed her a thick envelope, his eyes sharp. "Memorize this. If anyone asks, you tell them the donations were redirected to construction delays. You say it with conviction, Nora, or you'll ruin everything." Her hand shook as she flipped through the documents. "This isn't right, Damien. These families." He slammed his fist against the coffee table, making her flinch. "These families wouldn't have a dime without me. You think anyone cares where the money really goes? You want to live in this world, don't you? You want the trips, the clothes, the life I gave you? Then prove it. Prove you're not ungrateful." She swallowed, nodded. "I'll do it." And she had. The rain outside her apartment window grew heavier, dragging her back to the present. Rowan studied her closely, his expression unreadable. "Why are you showing me this now?" Lenora exhaled shakily. "Because last week, when he hit me, in front of everyone, I realized I've been keeping him safe from consequences. Even when he hurt me, even when he stole, I was his shield." Her eyes lifted to his. "I don't want to be his shield anymore." For a long moment, Rowan said nothing. Then, gently, he reached across the table and laid his hand over hers. "Then let me be yours." Her breath caught. No one had ever said that to her before. But the unveiling wasn't just for Rowan. That weekend, at Izzy's apartment, the group gathered again. The mood was heavier than usual. Conversations clipped. Calder kept checking his phone. June sipped nervously at her wine. Omar avoided eye contact altogether.
The memory of Damien's violence lingered between them like smoke. Halfway through the night, Lenora stood. Her hands shook, but her voice steadied. "There's something you all need to know." The room fell silent. She placed a folder on the coffee table, its contents spilling slightly. Ledgers, bank statements, email printouts. "I wasn't just his girlfriend. I was his accomplice. I covered for Damien's crimes for years. Fraud, embezzlement, theft. I told myself it was love, but it was fear. I lied to all of you too. Every time I said he was just misunderstood. Every time I said he was better than he seemed. I'm done lying." Izzy's eyes filled with tears. Calder cursed under his breath. June pressed her fingers to her lips. Omar finally spoke. "Lenora, do you realize what this means? If you take this to the authorities, Damien's finished. He won't just pay a fine, he'll face prison." Her heart pounded, but her voice was clear. "Good." The word hung in the air like thunder. Izzy rushed forward, hugging her tightly. "You're not alone. Not anymore." Lenora closed her eyes against the tears, feeling for the first time that the chains around her chest had loosened. But behind the relief came fear, because Damien would not go quietly. Across town, Damien sat in his office, scrolling through a stream of messages. His legal advisor had warned him of an investigation circling closer. A whistleblower had come forward. His jaw clenched, his mind racing. Lenora. It had to be her. And for the first time in years, Damien felt something new. Not arrogance, not superiority. Fear.
The storm had broken the night before, and Louisville woke to a rare stretch of soft sunlight. Lenora found herself walking along the waterfront with Rowan, the Ohio River glimmering gold beneath the morning light. She tugged her coat tighter against the breeze. "I can't remember the last time I walked without looking over my shoulder." Rowan's hands were in his pockets, his stride easy beside hers. "You're allowed to. You don't have to keep bracing for him every second." She laughed bitterly. "That's easy to say when it's not your past clawing at your heels." He glanced at her, his eyes calm but sharp. "You think I don't know what it's like to have a past you can't shake?" She stopped, surprised. "You?" Rowan shrugged, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I drank too much in college, wrecked my first job, nearly wrecked myself, lost friends over it. I still hear the whispers sometimes, but I learned you don't erase the past by hiding from it. You stare it down until it doesn't own you anymore." Lenora studied him quietly. For the first time, she realized Rowan wasn't just the quiet, steady man she leaned on these past weeks. He carried his own fractures, too. A soft warmth spread through her chest. "You make it sound simple." "It's not," he admitted, "but neither is living scared." That evening, Izzy insisted on hosting everyone again. This time, the air wasn't heavy. It was tentative, but lighter, threaded with laughter that hadn't been heard in weeks. Calder told ridiculous stories from work. Omar teased him for embellishing. And June read one of her poems aloud, her voice trembling but radiant. Lenora sat curled in an armchair, listening. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged, not as Damien's shadow, not as the woman covering for his sins, but as herself. When Rowan leaned down to hand her a glass of wine, his fingers brushed hers. The touch was brief, almost accidental, but it sent a ripple through her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't ask what for. He just smiled faintly and took the seat beside her. Later in the night, Izzy pulled her into the kitchen while the others debated which movie to put on. "You're glowing," Izzy said, smirking. I rolled my eyes. "Don't start. I'm serious. You're different tonight. Lighter." Lenora hesitated, then admitted, "For the first time in forever, I feel safe." Izzy squeezed her hand. "That's because you're finally letting people carry some of the weight. You don't have to be an island anymore." Lenora swallowed hard, her throat thick. "What if it doesn't last? What if he takes it all back?" Izzy's voice was firm. "Then we'll fight him together. But promise me something. Don't run from the good just because you're afraid of the bad." The words sank deep, tugging at something fragile inside her. When she returned to the living room, the lights were dimmed, the movie flickering on screen.
Rowan had saved a space beside him. As she curled into the couch, the warmth of his arm brushed hers. Neither moved away. At one point, her head tipped against his shoulder. She froze, ready to apologize, but Rowan didn't flinch. He simply shifted slightly, steadying her there as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Her chest tightened with something she hadn't felt in years. Not just safety, not just belonging, but hope. The night ended with hugs and promises to meet again soon. As Rowan walked her home, the city streets quiet around them, Lenora felt the silence between them hum with unspoken words. At her door, she hesitated. "Rowan?" He looked at her, his expression unreadable. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Why are you doing this? Why are you here?" His answer was simple, steady. "Because you deserve someone who doesn't flinch when things get hard." Tears pricked her eyes. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, she leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, solid and unyielding, like a promise. For the first time since Damien's hand struck her face, Lenora believed that healing was possible. Fragile, fleeting, but possible. Yet deep in her chest, she knew peace was only the eye of the storm. Damien's shadow lingered, and when it struck again, it would try to tear this newfound safety apart. But tonight, for the first time in years, she let herself believe in tomorrow. What would you do if someone you loved once deeply betrayed you, but someone new showed you what love could really feel like? Would you risk trusting again? Share your thoughts below.
The phone call came just after midnight. Lenora startled awake, the shrill ringing slicing through the quiet. She fumbled for her phone on the nightstand, blinking against the screen's harsh glow. The caller ID froze her heart. Damien. For a moment, she considered ignoring it, letting the call die in the dark. But something in her gut warned her. If she didn't pick up, it would only get worse. Her thumb slid across the screen. "What do you want?" Damien's voice was smooth, almost amused. "Bold of you to assume you get to ask the questions now." She gritted her teeth. "It's over, Damien. I'm done covering for you. Everyone knows the truth." He laughed softly. "Do they? Or do they only know the version you've given them? Because, darling, I have my version too, and it's much more entertaining." Her chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" "I have emails, Lenora. Copies of the documents you doctored. The signature you forged. If I go down, you go down with me." Her breath caught. "You wouldn't—" "Oh, I would. And I will. Unless—" his voice dropped to a knife's edge. "Unless you come meet me tomorrow night alone." The line went dead before she could answer. The next day, she sat at Izzy's kitchen table, pale and trembling, recounting the call. Her friends were horrified. "He's bluffing," Calder said firmly. "He doesn't have anything." "He's not bluffing," Lenora whispered. "I remember signing those papers. I remember every lie I told for him." Rowan sat across from her, jaw tight. "Then we'll fight him. You have proof of his crimes, not just yours. If this goes to court—" "You don't understand," she snapped, her voice cracking. "He'll drag me down with him, and the jury won't care that he manipulated me. They'll just see my name on the lies." Rowan's eyes softened. "Lenora." But she stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. "You don't get it. I'm not innocent. I chose him. I chose to protect him, and now it's too late." The room fell silent. Her breath came fast and shallow, panic rising. Izzy reached for her, but Lenora pulled away, shaking her head. "I can't do this. I can't drag all of you into his war." She fled the apartment before anyone could stop her. That night, the confrontation came sooner than expected. Lenora returned home to find her door ajar. Her stomach dropped. She stepped inside cautiously, her breath shallow. Damien sat on her couch, a glass of whiskey in hand, as though he owned the place. "You really should change your locks."
he drawled. "But then you always did make it too easy for people to get in." Her pulse thundered. "Get out. Not until we talk." He set the glass down and leaned forward. "I gave you everything, Nora. The clothes, the trips, the life you wanted. And this is how you repay me? By crying victim to your little group of misfit friends?" She swallowed hard, anger and fear colliding. "I gave you chains. I gave you scars." His expression hardened. "I gave you power, and you're too weak to see it." She stood tall, voice shaking but firm. "No, Damien, you only ever gave me fear, and I'm done living in it." For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy and electric. Then his hand lashed out, grabbing her wrist, squeezing hard enough for her to cry out. "Careful. You're not as free as you think." Before she could respond, the front door burst open. Rowan stood in the doorway, his eyes blazing. "Let her go." Damien smirked, releasing her wrist. "Ah, the knight in shining armor. Always wondered when you'd make your move." Rowan stepped inside, fists clenched. "This isn't your world anymore, Damien. Walk away." Damien's gaze flicked between them, then he chuckled, standing. "Oh, I'm not going anywhere. Not until she remembers who she belongs to." And with that, he brushed past Rowan and left, the door slamming shut behind him. The silence that followed was suffocating. Rowan turned to Lenora, his expression torn between fury and concern. "Why didn't you tell me he was threatening you?" Her chest tightened. "Because you don't understand. He holds everything over me. If I fight him, I lose everything. If I stay quiet, I lose myself." Rowan stepped closer, voice low but urgent. "You're not alone in this anymore. You have me. You have all of us." But she shook her head, tears spilling. "That's exactly why I can't drag you deeper into it. I won't let him destroy you, too." He reached for her hand, but she pulled back. "Rowan!" "No," her voice broke. "I can't give you this. I can't give you me. Not when Damien's shadow is still here." The words cut through the room like glass. Rowan's face fell, pain flashing in his eyes. He opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. Finally, he nodded once, quietly, and stepped toward the door. As he left, Lenora sank to the floor, sobbing silently. The fragile bond she had built was shattered. Her safety, her hope, gone in a heartbeat. And then the hollow silence of her apartment, she realized Damien had won this round. But the war wasn't over.
The city was quiet that night. Louisville's streets glistened with rain, the neon signs of bars flickering against the wet pavement. Lenora sat alone at her kitchen table, the single lamp casting long shadows across the walls. The folder of documents lay open before her again. Pages of fraud, siphoned money, false signatures, her handwriting scrawled across too many of them. Proof of Damien's empire, proof of her complicity. Her hand shook as she traced her name on one of the forged contracts. For years she had believed these lies kept her safe. Now they threatened to be her undoing. If she exposed him, Damien would make sure the world saw her as a criminal too. If she stayed silent, he would keep destroying everything and everyone around her. Either way, she lost. Her reflection in the darkened window caught her eye. Hollow cheeks, tired eyes, a bruise faintly yellow along her jaw. She barely recognized herself. The silence pressed against her chest. For the first time, she whispered into the empty room, "What am I so afraid of?" The answer came quickly. Being unworthy of love, of safety, of forgiveness. Her phone buzzed, a text from Rowan. "I'm here if you want me, always."
She stared at the words until her eyes blurred. Her chest ached. She had pushed him away, told him he couldn't be part of her war, and yet he stayed, close enough for her to reach, far enough for her to choose. Another text lit the screen, Izzy this time. Whatever you decide, we stand with you. But you need to decide, Lenora. Silence will kill you faster than him. Her throat tightened. Silence. That had always been her weapon, her shield, her cage. She closed her eyes and memories rushed back. Damien's hand guiding hers over a pen. Just sign. Trust me. Her mother's voice when she was a teenager. Don't rock the boat, Nora. Keep quiet. Keep safe. Her own voice shaking after every fight with Damien. If I stay silent, maybe it won't get worse. Silence had been survival. But now silence meant surrender. The decision crystallized slowly, like ice forming on glass. She rose from the table and crossed the room to the small lockbox under her bed. Inside, she kept the hard drive Damien had once given her to hold for him. At the time, she hadn't asked questions. Now she knew this was the heart of it all. Financial records, emails, receipts, names, enough to dismantle his empire piece by piece. Her hands trembled as she lifted it out, heavy in her palms. The next morning, she walked into the law office of Calder's cousin, a defense attorney, known for his blunt honesty. The reception smelled faintly of coffee and old carpet. Her palms were sweaty as she sat in the small conference room, the folder and hard drive on the table before her. When the attorney walked in, he raised an eyebrow. "Lenora Vance, I've heard your name more than a few times. You're finally ready to talk?" Her mouth was dry. She forced herself to nod. "I need to make this right. I need to tell everything, even if it destroys me." The attorney studied her for a long moment, then leaned forward. "If you're serious, this won't be clean. He'll fight dirty. He'll drag your name through the mud. But if you've got proof," he tapped the folder, "then you might finally bring him down." Her throat tightened. She nodded again, firmer this time. "I want to do it." That night she sat on her balcony, the city lights flickering across the river. For the first time, the weight pressing on her chest had shifted. It wasn't gone, but it wasn't suffocating her anymore. The door creaked open behind her. Rowan stepped out quietly, hands in his pockets. He didn't ask how the meeting went. He didn't press. He just stood beside her, silent, steady. Finally, she whispered, "I'm going to the police, with everything. No more silence." Rowan turned his head, his eyes searching hers. "Are you ready for what comes after?" Her voice trembled, but it was sure. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Rowan sat beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. "Then I'm with you, no matter how hard it gets." Tears filled her eyes. For the first time in years, her choice wasn't between survival and surrender. It was between silence and truth. And she had chosen truth. But as the night deepened, so did the dread. Damien wouldn't go quietly. He never did. And Lenora knew. The choice she had made wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the final battle.
The courtroom was hushed. Lenora sat at the witness stand, palms pressed against her knees to keep them from trembling. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching in the polished wood of the benches. Reporters scribbled in notebooks. Cameras clicked softly. Across the room, Damien sat at the defense table, his suit sharp as ever, his smirk barely faded. But his eyes were harder to read now, narrower, desperate. The prosecutor adjusted his papers.
Miss Vance, can you tell the court, in your own words, what role you played in Mr. Carraway's financial operations? The silence stretched. Every eye turned to her. Her throat ached, but she lifted her chin. I lied for him. I covered his fraud. I signed papers I shouldn't have signed. And I stayed silent even when I knew it was wrong. A murmur rippled through the gallery. But, she continued, her voice steadying, I was manipulated, intimidated. He told me if I loved him, I would protect him. And for years I believed that, until he showed me, until he proved to me that all he ever wanted was control. That night, when he hit me in front of my friends, I realized I was done protecting him, done protecting silence. Her eyes flicked briefly to Damien. His smirk faltered. I brought everything I had to the authorities. The documents, the accounts, the truth, because he doesn't just hurt the people closest to him. He hurts everyone who ever trusted him. The prosecutor nodded, satisfied. Thank you, Miss Vance. Lenora stepped down, her legs weak, but her chest lighter than it had been in years. The trial stretched on for days. Witnesses came forward. Izzy, Omar, Calder, June, each testifying to Damien's violence, his manipulation, his charm-turned weapon. The prosecution laid out the evidence in painstaking detail. Stolen donations, laundered funds, years of deception. Damien's defense fought hard, but the mountain of proof was impossible to ignore. On the final day, the jury filed back into the courtroom, their expressions grave. The foreman stood, clearing his throat. We, the jury, find the defendant Damien Carraway guilty on all counts. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, the click of cameras. Damien's face twisted, his arrogance collapsing into fury. He turned towards Lenora, eyes blazing. You think you've won? You'll regret this. You'll regret crossing me. Before he could say more, the bailiff pulled him back, cuffing his wrists. For the first time, Lenora saw him not as untouchable, but as small. The judge's gavel struck. Mr. Carraway, you are hereby sentenced to 15 years in federal prison and restitution of all stolen funds. The sound of the gavel echoed through the courtroom, final and unyielding. When it was over, Lenora stepped outside into the crisp autumn air. Reporters swarmed her, microphones thrust toward her, questions flying. How does it feel to see justice served? Do you regret your role in the crimes? Will you press charges for the assault? The noise pressed in until Rowan appeared at her side, gently guiding her through the crowd. Not now, he told them firmly, shielding her as they walked to the steps. At the bottom of the courthouse stairs, Izzy, Calder, June, and Omar waited. They cheered softly, rushing forward to hug her. You did it, Izzy whispered, tears streaking her cheeks. You really did it. Her voice shook. No, we did it. I couldn't have stood alone. Her friends tightened their embrace, a circle of warmth in the cold air. That evening she found herself back in her living room, the same room where Damien had struck her weeks before. The bruise was gone now, but the memory lingered. She stood in the center of the room, tracing the faint mark on the wall where her glass had shattered that night. Rowan entered quietly, setting down a bag of takeout on the coffee table. Thought you might be hungry. She turned, her eyes meeting his. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, she whispered, that night, when he hit me in front of everyone, I thought I'd never feel whole again, but now, her voice broke, now I feel free. Rowan stepped closer. You are free, Lenora, and you're not alone. Her chest tightened. I pushed you away. I thought I didn't deserve. He silenced her gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You deserve everything, especially love. Her tears spilled, but this time they were light, cleansing. She leaned into him, her forehead resting against him. Then stay, please. I'm not going anywhere, he murmured. Their lips met softly, not with urgency, but with promise. A kiss born not of desperation, but of healing.
Weeks later, life slowly began to settle. Lenora walked with her friends through the bustling autumn market, laughter threading through their conversations. She stopped to watch children chase each other between stalls, the air filled with the scent of roasted chestnuts and cider. For the first time in years, she felt no shadow at her back. Rowan reached for her hand. She laced her fingers with his, their grip steady. As the group moved on, Izzy nudged her playfully. "So, a fresh start, huh?" Lenora smiled. "A fresh start, with all of you, with him, with me." The bruise was gone. The silence was broken. The chains were shattered. Lenora had been struck down, humiliated, silenced, but in her vengeance, her truth, she had found something greater than justice. She had found herself. If you were in Lenora's shoes, would you have chosen silence to protect yourself or risked everything to speak the truth? And do you believe love can still bloom after betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you loved this story, you will definitely love the next one. It's more intriguing than you can ever imagine. So go ahead and watch it now. Click on the image on your screen right away to watch the next one. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It helps and encourages us to share the best human interest stories you'd love.